digital impacts the business model itself. So it is important to recognize that fusion is truly transformative because we have to challenge the assumptions in every part of our business. Then Gen AI can now look for patterns that human beings will find it very difficult to find. Because we can ask it what happened at a certain time, descriptive analysis, diagnostic analysis, predictive analysis, and prescriptive analysis. Now with generative AI, we're getting into generative analysis. The generative analysis are going to be done by humans and AI agents working together. That generative insights is going to happen at unprecedented scale with significant scope and a much faster speed. That's why data graphs underpin and algorithms animate fusion. But that's not enough. Because once we get the C-suite to understand fusion strategy is the business strategy, then we got to get everyone in the organization to recognize the digital physical connection, the role of data and AI, to allow the machines to do the heavy lifting. Let the machines do the hard part and the humans do value adding. That's the fusion thinking throughout the organization.
皆様こんにちは。NTT データ経営研究所と国への社長をしています山口です。今日はボストン大学のクエストロムスクールのベンカトラマン教授をお招きし、AI や IoT 等の技術が急激に進展する中で、製造業はどのようなデジタル戦略を取るべきかについてインタビューをしましたのでご紹介いたします。ベンカトラマン教授は情報システムと戦略とイノベーションの専門家で、以前はマサチューセッツ工科大学のスローン経営大学院やロンドンビジネススクールで教鞭をとっておられました。製品、プロセス、サービスが情報技術によってどのように形成され支えられるかについての第一人者でございます。主要な学術雑誌にも発表され、IBM やメルク、エルクソン、BP 等の企業のとデジタル戦略のワークショップを実施されております。今回、ビジェイさんと共著でフュージョンストラテジーを出版されました。今回はベンカトラマンさんにテクノロジーサイドからのこのフュージョンストラテジーの考えについてご説明をお伺いしたいと思います。私は4月にボストン大学のベンカトラマン教授を訪問しました。デジタルマトリックスではデジタルが企業の事業展開のスケール、規模ですね、またスコープ、範囲、またスピードを大きく変え、デジタルが新しい経済原理を作り出すというお話をされています。私も形のないつながった財サービス、コネクテッドインタンジブルプロダクトサービスが新たな経済原理を作り出すということを今まで変えてきておりますので、大変ここについてもですね、意気投合し学んだところでございます。ベンカトラマンさんはデータバリューチェーンという考えで、これをキーコンセプトに今後のデジタル変革の将来について語っておられます。このデータバリューチェーンというのは4段階でデータ分析が発展するという考えでございまして、一つでは何が起きたかを記述するレベルのデータ分析。次のステップではなぜ起きたのかの診断レベルのステージ。次のステージでは何が起きたか、次何が起きるかの予測レベルですね。これは今まで AI なんかですごく予測精度を上げてきたところかと思います。さらに今後は 次に何をすべきかの処方レベル。これはまさに生成 AI なんかが貢献するとかと思います。このように AI、IoT がどんどん進展するとデータの活用レベルが第4ステップの処方箋、何をすべきかのレベルまで上がるということで、そのようなテクノロジーを活用して製造業はどのようなデジタル変革を実施すべきかについて述べておられます。さらにこの書籍では、このフュージョンストラテジーを成功させていくためにどのような人材を育成していくべきか、またエコシステムをどのように作っていくべきか、またマネジメントするためにどんな評価指標を用いるべきかについても興味深い話をされています。この動画では AI、IoT が発展、進展する中で製造業は具体的にどのような戦略を取るべきか、将来に向けてどんな戦略を取るべきかについて語っておられます。今回はベン・カントラマンさんからそれをこのデータ分析のサイド、少しテクノロジーサイドというんでしょうか、から語っていただいておりますので、インタビュー動画を見ていただければと思います。Thank you for joining me today. It's an honor to host this dialogue. Today, I look forward to diving deeper into how real-time data and AI can transform industrial growth and reshape business strategies for the future with Professor Benkant. Next, I'd like to introduce Professor Benkant Toraman, Professor Emeritus at Boston University's Questrom School of Business. Benkant is a leading expert in the field of digital transformation, with numerous publications in top academic journals. After writing the digital matrix, he also co-authored Fusion Strategy, which we will be discussing today. Benkant-san, could you please tell the audience a bit more about yourself and your work?
Thank you very much, Yamaguchi-san. When I started my academic career at MIT Sloan School, I got involved in a research project called Management in the 1990s. It was a forward-looking research project on how will information technology impact the way managers manage corporations and how we teach management. Now, in 1985, you can imagine we had personal computers. We had simple software like Lotus 123 and WordPerfect. Computers were not connected, and we didn't know what the internet was going to be. But the question about the role of information technology and business has been part of my research journey ever since 1985. I wrote the book, The Digital Matrix, arguing that digital companies will come in and disrupt every industry. But at that time, the focus was on asset-light industries like photography, advertising, financial services. Working with Professor Vijay Govindarajan, we decided to focus on the role of real-time data and AI on industrial sectors. So for the last nearly 40 years, my work has been at the intersection of business strategy and information technology, which now includes digital and AI.
Thank you, Benkant-san, for sharing your background with us. Let me walk you through today's agenda. We will start by talking about the connected intangible economy. Next, I would like to talk about Benkan-san's journey from his earlier book, The Digital Matrix, to Fusion Strategy. Then discuss the impact of AI and data. After that, we will dive deeper into Fusion Strategy. I will share our framework bridging with Fusion Strategy. Finally, in the closing section, I would like to ask Benkan-san to share his messages for Japanese asset-heavy industry leaders. Let us begin our dialogue today. In today's world, business value is shifting from physical product to connected intangible products and services. This slide shows the digital impact on economy, changing the way we trade products and services. We are seeing the rise of a new economy, driven by connected intangible products and services. The next phase is autonomous business processes. Advanced technologies like machine learning and generative AI allow companies to operate with fewer human involvement, pushing a business further into connected intangible economy. This slide shows the new rules of connected intangible economy from the perspective of scale, scope, and speed advantages on customer value and cost. Benkato-san has also discussed the concept of scale, scope, and speed extensively in the digital matrix. Benkato-san, I would now like to ask you to share your perspective on these ideas.
Thank you very much. The interesting aspect about industrial economy is that we've talked more about scale and scope. But in the digital era, speed is becoming important. In the industrial era, we talked about scale as market share. And digital era, we are looking at scale as how companies connect with every other company in the broader ecosystem. The same thing with scope. We did adjoining extensions. Now it is possible for companies to use data to expand to unrelated industries and still have a competitive advantage. Speed, we were thinking about speed relative to the industry. Now it is speed relative to the internet or the web. So when you take scale, scope, and speed together, there is a completely new set of drivers in this connected, intangible economy that will create and unlock more value than we ever seen possible before.
Thank you, Benkan-san, for sharing your insight on scale, scope, and speed. Let us discuss the transition from digital matrix to fusion strategy. In the digital matrix, Benkan-san introduced several key frameworks for navigating digital transformation. In this part, we will explore some of those concepts and discuss how they have evolved over the time. Benkan-san, your two books, The Digital Matrix and The Fusion Strategy, seem to be closely connected. To kick off this part of the dialogue, I would like to ask about your motivation for co-authoring Fusion Strategy with Professor Vijay.
Thank you very much. The idea of the digital matrix was to bring attention to every industry that the future competitive landscape will be based on actions of the big digital giants like the Google, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft and others, as well as very small startups like Netflix and Spotify and Tesla, affecting every industry. So I articulated 3 types of players and then laid out 3 phases of transformation. Sometimes it's an experimentation at the edge, just like what AI was. Then it suddenly starts to collide at the core. And then the reinvention happens where digital giants compete and partner with industrial companies, and tech entrepreneurs work with digital giants and industrial companies. And we have a completely new ecosystem of competition and cooperation. When I finished that book, Vijay Govindarajan had completed his book on 3-box solution, where he was beginning to articulate the need for thinking about innovation differently than how companies have done innovation in the past. So we started discussing, and we said, where is this future going? And we very quickly realized that the future is really the asset-heavy industries. Because something like 75% of the economy, which roughly today is about $100 trillion, is in producing some aspect of physical goods, whether it is what you and I consume at home or what happens in the shop floor for big industrial sector transformation like energy, mining, buildings, transportation, construction, aircrafts, and so on. So we said, why don't we focus our next research project on really talking about the battlegrounds for the asset-heavy industry? And that's what led us to really write this book that we called as Fusion Strategy, because it's not just digital strategy or IT strategy or strategy for technology, but it's truly the fusion of physical and digital domains. That means digital impacts the design of the product, digital impacts how organizations design their processes, extend into their suppliers and distributors, digital impacts service delivery, digital impacts how we organize ourselves, and ultimately, digital impacts the business model itself. So it is important to recognize that fusion is truly transformative because we have to challenge the assumptions in every part of our business. Do not think about adding digital to the old organization strategy or the structure, because as I mentioned earlier, scale, scope, and speed differ because of digital technologies. So that's what really led us to focus on the fusion of physical and digital domains.
Thank you, Benkan-san, for sharing your journey to fusion strategy. Let's talk a bit more about the digital metrics, a framework from Benkan-san that helps companies assess their position in digital landscape and understand the dynamics of competition. Fusion strategy focuses on asset-heavy industries. Benkan-san, could you share your insight on how such industry incumbents should navigate the 3 phases of transformation? And how is this reflected in fusion strategy?
Yes, the industrial companies have been very good at digitizing their products and processes. But they do that within the domain of their industry knowledge. So if you are in construction, you digitize the construction process. If you are in farming, you digitize how you develop and design tractors. My thinking is very simple, which is if every product is becoming a digital industrial product, you have to look at experimentation at the edge of the industry, not within your own industry. For example, if automobile companies are becoming producers of products that are computers on wheels connected to the cloud, a tractor company should also think about a tractor not as an industrial product, but as a set of computers on wheels that is operating on the farm. A construction equipment company like Caterpillar or Komatsu should look at their earth-moving equipment as a set of computers on wheels that is working in construction equipment and in mining. So that's the experimentation at the edge. Then very quickly, the industrial companies realize that the new startups, whether they are digital companies like Google's Waymo, that's thinking about automobiles as computers on wheels, or Zoox, or small startups like Monarch Tractors or others, start to collide with your business model. So that's the collision at the core, is when the economics of the current business model is challenged by the digital first companies, which means we can no longer operate the old way because that is inefficient and ineffective. The third phase for the industrial companies is reinvention at the root. They have to reimagine what a digital industrial company will look like in every asset-heavy sectors. And I'm sure we will talk more about what this means for the Japanese industry later on.
Thank you, Benkato-san. This slide introduces the second key winning move from the digital matrix, focusing on the importance of collaboration to co-create new capabilities. Benkato-san, I would like to ask for your insight on how this cooperative relationship plays out for manufacturers.
What we have done for about 100 years is every manufacturing company focused on end-to-end design, delivery, and service, just like what Henry Ford did with the Ford Model T. So vertical integration was the main logic. Now we are beginning to see that when it becomes a digital industrial product, there is a hardware layer, there is a software layer, there's an application layer, there's a data layer, there's an analytical layer, and there is cloud computing layer. And manufacturing company cannot be good at everything. So manufacturing company, when it becomes a digital industrial company, has to partner by deciding which part of the technical stack they should control and which part of the technical stack they can now work with a set of digital partners. That is the logic of cooperation. So we are collaborating to co-create new capabilities, just like what Mercedes-Benz is trying to do to come up with the software for their next generation automobile. Just like what we would expect a next generation industrial company to do, collaborate to co-create new digital business capabilities.
Thank you, Benkato-san, for sharing your insights. The last framework from Digital Matrix I want to talk about today is the Rules Matrix, a framework that provides 9 specific rules to guide companies through the digital transformation journey. Benkato-san, Could you explain the rules matrix in more detail?
Yes, thank you. This has been an exciting intellectual journey for me to really look at these three phases: experimentation, collision, and reinvention, and think about what should companies do in each of those phases, because they all coexist at the same time. At this point in time, somebody is experimenting the next generation AI tools. Somebody else is reinventing the role of the tractor in the agriculture ecosystem. So the rules are we need to orchestrate and participate in the different ecosystems. We can't orchestrate all ecosystems. So we have to select which ecosystems we want to orchestrate and where we want to participate. Who are the partners that we need to work with in co-creating the capabilities? The partners we co-create for experimentation may be very different than the partner we may have for collision and reinvention. We may partner with NVIDIA to understand during experimentation stage, but we may have an entirely different partner when the industries get reinvention. The most important part of the rules to me is about amplifying human talent with powerful machines, because ultimately the future organization is going to be with smart humans working with powerful machines. That is the theme that we carry from Digital Matrix into Fusion Strategy when we talk about the role of data and AI. So amplification becomes an important part.
Thank you, Benkan-san. I'm sure that the frameworks you have introduced from the digital matrix to the rules matrix have been extremely beneficial for our audience. Thank you. In this part, I would like to share my perspective on how machine learning and generative AI is changing the business landscape. This slide highlights how generative AI will further empower digital impact, accelerating customer value creation and reducing cost across the value chain. I will go into more detail on personalization and automation shortly, so let's use automation as an example here. Generative AI will handle more complex tasks beyond routine ones, automating many processes currently managed by humans. This will free up human resources for strategic, creative, and decision-making roles, improving efficiency and reducing costs. In my opinion, personalization and autocomplete are key digital drivers that will be greatly evolved by generative AI. This slide shows how generative AI creates new customer experiences and helps business reduce costs while speeding up the value chain. For asset industries, it is crucial to capture interactive IoT data, or real-time data as Benkan-san calls it. This interactive data can generally maximize machine learning's capabilities and drive digital transformation in these companies. Next, let's focus on the autocomplete part. With generative AI becoming an agent, we no longer have to define the process, but to define the outcome. As AI advances through these three stages, it enables business to offer even more tailored real-time interaction with customers, significantly enhancing the overall experience while keeping costs low. Now, I would like to invite Benkan-san to share his thoughts on these concepts. Benkan-san, what are your insights on how generative AI is transforming customer experiences and operations? What do you think about the impact of real-time data and AI? Will have on the asset-heavy industry?
Yes. When we started writing the book, what became clear to us was that most industrial companies have data at the edge of their supply chain, which could be dealers, but they did not have real-time data on industrial products in use. So they had data on products as designed, they had data on products as manufactured, but they did not have data on products as used. Exactly as you mentioned, with IoT sensors and software and cloud functionality, it is now possible to understand how every tractor is adding value on the farm. Every automobile is moving physical goods across the supply chain. Every train is adding value to the economy. Every building is adding value. So once we are able to put these IoT sensors on physical products and make them digital physical products, we can now collect real-time data. And once we collect real-time data, then Gen AI can now look for patterns that human beings will find it very difficult to find. Because we can ask it what happened at a certain time. Instead of looking for averages, it can look for patterns. Did it happen in a dry condition? Did it happen under some flooding condition? Did it happen under human errors? Did it happen under some other condition? And so Gen AI and the role of agents will become much more central in trying to help us as humans navigate the complexity of making sense of real-time data.
Thank you, Benkan-san. As these technologies continue to evolve, they will play an even bigger role in shaping the future of customer value and operational efficiency. I am excited to see how business will continue to adapt and thrive in this changing landscape. Now, let's dive into fusion strategy and explore the key elements that asset-heavy industry can use to thrive in the digital era. Benkan-san, could you tell us more about how data graphs and advanced algorithms are enabling data network effect and shaping the future of business strategies?
If you look at how we have utilized data in the past, we have utilized it to understand how reliable the product is, how the product has added value at an average level. And then we went into platform thinking, where the direct network effects and indirect network effects added value to product. So a phone is only as good as the number of apps. Microsoft Windows is only as good as the number of peripherals that can work on Windows, and so on and so forth. That made sense when in the early stages of digitization. But we didn't pay much attention to the data about how people were using the product. I mentioned that earlier, right? So when we now look at the idea of data network effect, that means it's the data that I get when every car is being driven on the road, data that I get when every tractor is on every field everywhere in the world. That means constantly I'm getting data. But that data is not structured data. That is unstructured data. That data is not just about predefined parameters, but this is about sounds. This is about images. This is about video of how the tractor is performing. So the data network effects allow us to get a much richer understanding of our products in use. And once we have the data, I can now deliver value to each customer based on analyzing every other customer's interaction with my product. Again, if you go back to the idea of data graphs, it came from understanding the consumer sector with digitization. Amazon has the purchase graph. Netflix has the movie graph.
Yeah.
Spotify has the music graph. Google has the search graph. LinkedIn has the professional graph. So every one of these companies take advantage of the data network effects. Now, when you put that in the context of the data value chain that we write about that in the book, now we go from data to information. We can now ask what happened. By looking at all the network effects, we can get a rich understanding of what happened. Then information to knowledge. Why did it happen? This knowledge would typically be in human beings. Now this knowledge can be given to agents. From knowledge to action, what could happen in the future, which means what preventative or predictive analytics can we do? Then once we get the action, we can recommend what should the company do, what should the customer do, and that's the result. Yeah. So we have always carried out with data descriptive analysis, diagnostic analysis, predictive analysis, and prescriptive analysis. Now with generative AI, we're getting into generative analysis. Yeah. The generative analysis are going to be done by humans and AI agents working together. That generative insights is going to happen at unprecedented scale with significant scope and a much faster speed. That's why data graphs underpin and algorithms animate fusion, as you've identified in this slide.
Thank you, Benkan-san, for shedding light on the critical role that data graphs and algorithms play in fusion strategy. Now, I would like to explore how AI and IoT come together, particularly through the concept of tripartite twins and how they enable companies to conquer critical customer moments with advanced analytical techniques. Benkan-san, could you share with us why fusion strategy relies so heavily on AI and IoT?
Yes. The power of real-time data is in having an end-to-end view on the industrial processes. Because we have mostly designed companies to maximize individual functions. The design function is optimized. Then we get the best design, we give it to manufacturing. Then manufacturing gives it to the sales and service, and it focuses on deployment. Once we take an end-to-end view, we believe that the real power of the data network effects is when we interconnect product digital twin with process digital twin and performance digital twin, which means when there is a deviation in the problem at the level of the customer, we can ask, did it happen because of a manufacturing problem? Or did it happen because of a design problem? Or did it happen because of a supplier problem that went into manufacturing? So the data network effects with tripartite twins, the idea of tripartite is we have done digital twins before. Industrial companies know digital twin in product and process. But if we now add the performance to it, we have an end-to-end view. Yeah. And with generative AI, we can ask, how could that be done better for this customer operating under these conditions? That's the force multiplier when it comes to generative AI.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Next, let's talk about the key takeaway from Fusion Strategy, the 4 battlegrounds. This slide outlines the 4 battlegrounds that Fusion Strategy centered around. Benkan-san, could you explain the 4 battlegrounds in more detail and why Fusion Strategy centers around these key areas?
Thank you. To us, this is the most central idea of the book, right?
Yeah.
Industrial companies first become a digital industrial company by designing and delivering fusion products first. Industrial companies know digitization for a long time because they have done it in processes. But now, as you said earlier, with IoT and software and sensors, we can think about every industrial product as a fusion product. That means it has the capability to be analyzed with real-time data in use. So the battle of brilliant machines is, are you creating the best fusion product so that you can analyze the product in real time so that you can take preventive action like over-the-air software update, fixing before it's likely to fail. Not just fixing all products, fixing the products based on real-time understanding of the wear and tear of those products. So that's the first battleground that every industrial company will face. Once we do that, we realize that we have now designed the data graphs to focus on machine efficiency. We can actually tell our customers that we can improve the uptime of the product from 95% to 99%, so machine efficiency. But that is for a single product. Now let's take the single product and ask what we can do with fusion services. Now stay with the farming example. If I give a farmer a very efficient tractor that is 98% operative, but I have not influenced the bottom line of the farmer, I have not improved the yield on the farm, I have not really helped the farmer improve the yield on the farm by optimizing other parts of the services. So can I now deliver remarkable services by improving the yield on the farm, by adjusting how the tractor now operates on the field, which means I have to connect to what fertilizers do they use, what crops do they plant, what is the rainfall. They got to collect all the data, and I got to optimize my tractor to be most effective for each farmer, which means I'm now extending the data graph, not just to make the machine efficient, but I'm now looking at service data graphs to impact customer outcomes. So an industrial company expands the addressable market, not just to sell tractors, but to use the tractor to impact the outcome for the farmer. Then we go up on the axis, the vertical axis. So far with the tractor, I've only connected one product, but a farmer requires a tractor, other equipment, many other things. So every farm is a system of products. So I could create fusion systems. Or you could take buildings where you got different types of systems all working together to make the buildings operate with the highest level of environmental sustainability. In most customer situations, interoperable products are important. But today, in most industrial companies, they didn't worry about interoperability of their products. Like in digital matrix, I mentioned, why co-creating and collaborating with your competitors become important. Fusion systems are all about ecosystems of complementary products that work. But ultimately, we put on the upper right the solutions company, because customers are looking for solutions that interconnect products and systems so that they can actually get the maximum value from industrial products. So we lay out the logic of the fusion strategy to look at the reach of the data graphs beyond your own company into customers, and then the richness of data, especially now with the availability of AI, where you can have machine learning on video models, machine learning on rich, high definition and high fidelity data. We're going to see fusion systems with very powerful AI agents stepping up to solving really interesting problems in the industrial sector. So that is what is really exciting on the possibilities of unlocking value that historically we couldn't tap into before.
Thank you, Benkan-san. As we move toward the end of this part, let's take a look at the 5 key principles of fusion strategies. Benkan-san, could you share more about these 5 success factors and how they serve as a foundation for fusion strategy?
Thank you. If you now think about what leaders must do, the leaders must think about experimentation at the edge. Some experiments are designed to reinforce what you're good at, but most experiments should be to challenge your current business models. And that's why let hundreds of experiments bloom. Once you allow the experiments to bloom, you can then decide what experiments do you want to focus on. Now, here is where we introduce an important idea for managers to think about, which is don't look at experiments as projecting from today to tomorrow, but look from tomorrow back to today, which is backcasting, right? What will 2030 look like in the Japanese industries? What will 2030 look like in the global industry in which the Japanese companies operate? Be best at backcasting says, what will 2030 look like? Will my company be relevant? What should I be good at for me to be successful in the future? And design experiments to resolve the uncertainties to make that happen. So that's the unlocking of the new business value across multiple stages, both inside the company and with ecosystem partners. The second principle is really about collaborative intelligence. I think you've highlighted that in your own work, the role of AI and humans working together. In the future, we may have fewer people, but we may also have very different type of people. So we have to look at retraining today's workforce, working with these AI agents. We have to also recruit tomorrow's talent base, because take a company like Mitsubishi or take a company like Hitachi. The executives and the talent that would have come to that industry or to that company in the last 30 years may be very different if that company is positioning itself as a digital industrial company. So that means it is going to attract data scientists that want to solve industrial problems. They will look at industrial AI experts, not consumer AI experts, industrial AI experts. So that means you're recruiting a very different talent base. Then the third part, which we have touched on earlier, is really got to live and grow in ecosystems. I say in all my lectures and workshops, a company is a portfolio of capabilities assembled through relationships in ecosystems. So you got to look at execution ecosystems and experimentation ecosystems, implementation ecosystems, and innovation ecosystems. So we've got to adapt the ecosystems for tomorrow as we learn more from experiments, as we attract new people, we've got to adapt the ecosystems as well. Then the fourth principle that we highlight is to think about leadership itself. For very, very long time, we have thought about digital as something that can be delegated to the IT people, the CIOs, the IT directors, the IT managers, and business people and digital people did not talk to each other because they really didn't have a common language. The idea of fusion is that this is a C-suite discussion, because ultimately, as you become a data-centric company, as an AI-first company, where does marketing end and data begins? Where does manufacturing end and service begins? They're all interconnected. That's why fusion products become fusion services. Fusion products become fusion systems, all part of the ecosystem. So fusion thinking becomes important in the C-suite. But that's not enough, because once we get the C-suite to understand fusion strategy is the business strategy, then we got to get everyone in the organization to recognize the digital physical connection, the role of data and AI, to allow the machines to do the heavy lifting. Let the machines do the hard part and the humans do value adding. That's the fusion thinking throughout the organization. And last but not least, I'm sure you will agree with me that organizations change when the scorecards change. We have to have different metrics and think about the metrics that relate to fusion product battlegrounds, fusion service battlegrounds, fusion systems battleground. If you're thinking about the battle of showdown of smart systems, think beyond your products. If you're going to be solving customer problems, think beyond your products. Define and modify the metrics as these battlegrounds change. So those are the ideas and fusion principles and practices.
Thank you. That wraps up the fusion strategy part of our dialogue. We covered the fundamentals of fusion strategy and explored the four battlegrounds that define where company must compete and innovate. Thank you, Benkan-san, for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. Now, I would like to share my own frameworks that align with the key principles of fusion strategy to drive digital transformation. Here is how I think the connected intangible will transform the tangible domain. For manufacturers to succeed in today's market, businesses need to integrate both domains using sensors and data to create a hybrid model to achieve competitive advantage. Next, please allow me to share my approach to maximizing digital impact, which I think is closely aligned with the four battlegrounds outlined in fusion strategy. It all starts with a deep understanding of the real problem that need to be solved. By analyzing the scenarios and purposes behind why customers use our product, we can identify the core issues that need addressing. Next, we focus on what product and services we can provide to solve those challenges. This involves creating personalized, connected, intangible services delivered at key customer touchpoints. We can also enhance value by embedding software and sensors into tangible products, transforming them into connected fusion products that deliver more meaningful interactions. By capturing and utilizing data from these fusion products, we can continuously improve our offerings and create more targeted solutions. Lastly, we need to ask ourselves if we can achieve all of this on our own or if we need to partner with companies. Collaboration is key to building a comprehensive fusion system that integrates both new digital services and existing tangible products. So, will you give me some comment on our frameworks?
Yes, I think you captured a lot of the ideas from the book into one slide, right? You put it in steps, you've identified the critical aspect. Let me just highlight one that I took away as I listened to you, which is what data can be captured and how will it be utilized? For industrial companies, it has always been about delivering the best product. But now you're asking them to look at what data can be captured and how will it be utilized. And I really want to highlight that. That allows you to understand the customer's real challenges. And so this is a fantastic way to capture the company, the customer, the partner interaction. And then one more thing before I close with this slide, which is every company should really ask, can this all be done on our own? Or do we need to work with other customers, other companies? The answer is it can never be done by any one company. Fusion is about digital industrial stack. There will only be specialists. And ultimately, we got to compete and collaborate and co-create with our partners. And you've captured that in that fusion systems part of the slide. Thank you very much for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you. Finally, Benkan-san, could you offer some perspectives and suggestions for Japanese heavy asset enterprises? Please.
Yes, I have been a fan of the Japanese economy, Japanese companies for a very long time. I've visited Japan many times, I've had discussions. And what you have done in producing excellent quality product at the most affordable prices have been revolutionary for the global marketplace. Now, Japan, just like every part of the major global economy, is facing what I would call as the fusion future. The fusion future, the value is not going to be in products as designed or products as manufactured, but as we discussed in the last 45 minutes, products as delivered. So the company has to think beyond today's success and think about what is necessary to succeed in this fusion future. Successful companies, like many Japanese companies, fail because they overinvest in what they are good at today and underinvest in what they need to be good at tomorrow. There are three types of resources that you should look at. Physical resources, financial and technological resources, but most important is the third category, which is management time. As you look into thinking about fusion strategy, think about the future and challenge your managers to identify the breakpoints that is going to create the future rather than incrementally adjusting your strategy. And once the Japanese heavy industry companies think about fusing it from product, processes, services to solving the customer problems and allocate the management time to look at new problems that can be solved rather than the current problems, I think we would have started the managers on the journey to truly becoming fusion leaders in the future. And Japanese companies will once again emerge as a leader with digital asset companies leading the way, just like your consumer and automotive companies led the way just after the Second World War, well into the early 21st century.
Thank you so much, Benkam-san, for sharing your invaluable insight and perspectives today. Your guidance on how AI, data, and fusion strategies can reshape industries, especially in the heavy asset sector. We look forward to continuing these important conversations as we all work towards embracing the opportunities and challenges of digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yamaguchi-san.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.